here. Is it officially 6 o'clock? My clock shows 6 o'clock.
Yes, it is.
Okay, terrific. Well then, everybody, for the benefit of the public, the mayor is out of town right now doing good work for the city of Beaverton, and I must say I'm ever so slightly jealous that she gets to sit next to the mayor of Turku, Finland, which is a place that I've read about, and I have been to Finland, so I think that would be really cool. But I will be moderating the meeting this evening. Did Councilor Kinney drop off? He was here earlier. We'll wait just a moment, see if he can get back on. Wonder if there's been technical difficulties where he is.
It seems to be a technical difficulty. He's not back on yet.
Yeah, he's in the process of trying to log back on.
Okay.
Just so everybody knows, in case you hadn't noticed it before, in the emails that Ms. Fisher sends us with agenda links and all that, at the bottom of the page is a cell phone number for our city recorder, which is sometimes handy when you need to contact the city recorder because of connection issues and things like that. So you might want to get that phone number into your contact list on your phone in case you need an emergency contact. We'll give him another minute or so to try to get on, and then we'll get going. Here he comes. Welcome back.
Yeah, I got kicked out for some reason. Sorry about that.
Okay, well, with that, I think everybody we're expecting is here tonight. So let's go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the Beaverton City Council for July 19th, 2022. With the city recorder, kindly call our roll.
Councillor Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Here.
Councillor Hassan.
Here.
Councillor Kinney.
Here.
Councillor Mitchell.
She is excused.
Councillor Sansusi.
I'm here.
Councillor Tivnon.
Here.
Mayor Beatty.
And she is also excused. Our first item of business is comments from visitors who wish to speak to the council. The instructions on how to do that are on the agenda page for the City Council. If you are listening and you want to know how to call in, you can call the number 669-254-5252. We will give you 3 minutes per person for comments to the council this evening. And generally, there is not back and forth dialogue between the council and members of the public who are addressing us. But since there has been quite a bit of testimony sent to us by email regarding our work session item this evening, we may have a few people wanting to speak to us. And if you are interested in speaking to the council about the Cooper Mountain plan work that we're going to discuss later, this is the time to do it because we won't be having a public hearing later this evening. So with that, Ms. City Recorder, do we have members of the public that would like to address the City Council?
Yes, Councillor Sansusi, we have one person who has signed on to speak.
Okay. Let's give them the microphone in 3 minutes. Do we know who it is?
It looks like we've given permission to Patricia Kepler.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Patricia.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, unmuted. I actually, yes, my name is Patricia Kepler, and I'm actually serving on the temporary committee for the ADA transition plan. And this is my first time attending this meeting. I'm not seeing an option for enabling a transcript to follow, and I'm just curious if that's a possibility.
That would be a question for the city recorder.
We have captioning services available, and they are running at this time. A person needs to set their device on to show the captioning.
Yeah, I'm not finding that option on the screen. I'm looking, there's usually something that says enable captioning and it's not letting me ask, it's not letting me get it. That's why I'm asking if it's not.
Are they,
That's it. I'm sorry. That was my only question. So hopefully we can get that resolved, but thank you.
Okay.
let's start her time again, shall we, at 3 minutes? Oh, okay.
We do have 3 other speakers, it looks like. So I'll go ahead and unmute Daniel Nielsen.
Okay, Mr. Nielsen, as soon as you're ready to go, we'll give you 3 minutes.
Hello. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Great. Thank you, councilors. Pleasure to be here. I appreciate the time here, you allowing me to speak. I'm here to speak on behalf of some fellow concerned residents of Beaverton regarding a noticeable increase in cars in the area. This can probably be said throughout the Portland area, but especially in Beaverton, parts of Beaverton. We've noticed an increase in loud car noise, particularly from cars with modified exhaust systems. Other vehicles as well, but I think the main issue is the cars without proper exhaust systems. And I think this relates to Oregon law, chapter 815 and section 250, stating that it's illegal to operate motor vehicle without a proper exhaust system. And if I'm not mistaken, there are limits on the decibel levels of such cars, and I think the decibel levels actually around 90, 99, maybe a little lower for newer cars. And this particularly being state law, I know it's a state law, but I imagine, even though I'm not a law enforcement professional by any means, I imagine it's best enforced on a local level. And so the fellow concerned residents and neighbors that I've been speaking with and myself, we all thought it would be a good idea to present this issue to you in hopes that you all could possibly address this issue going forward. But in any case, I believe it's a traffic class C traffic violation to operate motor vehicles in excess of that noise. And the main issue here is that this noise has been noticed not only during the day, but even at night especially, which I believe is going to be leading to public health issues if it's not already one. And we live in a fairly dense city, and it's only to get denser probably going forward. So I think this is becoming an even more important issue to address. But just to give a little bit of an idea of the location of some of the neighbors I've spoken with of where they've heard, especially at night, these increased noise. Highland neighborhood, specifically hearing traffic on Murray Boulevard, Farmington area, Cooper Mountain Heights, Rygert Road. And so yes, this has become a bigger issue. And then that goes along also with car meets, a noticeable increase in car meets, which alone are not necessarily an issue, but we've seen and observed these car meets with muscle cars happening during the daytime as well, during business hours, taking up public parking lots and disrupting local businesses and commerce. So in any case, I really appreciate the time, and we hope that you all will be able to help us address this issue going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. I'll give you just a quick comment. You're not the first person to bring this to the attention of the council, and we'll speak with the city manager and see if she can have somebody get back in touch with you about this. And with that, let's go to the next person wishing to address us.
President Sansusi.
Yes. Ms. Hariyama, please.
Can you not hear me, President Sansusi?
I can hear you.
I've taken a note and we will loop back.
And we've missed most of your comment, but I heard that we will loop back, so. Thank you. We'll follow up. We'll follow up on this within the next day or so. Okay. Who is next to address the council, please?
Our next speaker is Nicole.
Nicole, we can see you on screen. Thank you. You've got 3 minutes. Feel free.
Okay, so it's about the correct new way of eating continuance from the June 1st, 2022. The restaurants that serve animal and vertebrate flesh should be serving vegan and all natural foods instead of animal and vertebrate products. If they turn over to vegan and all natural foods, tensions and stress will lift off society as a whole. The health of people will expand and heal in ways we don't even comprehend. Diseases will not get passed from one generation to the next, and the life expectancy will be longer for the people, animals, and vertebrates. There needs to be a movement to change the appetite of the people where we all consume grains, fruits, vegetables, and all the natural grown vegan plant-based foods that happen to taste better if even better than your favorite dishes when prepared and cooked the correct way. So that is where the United States of America steps in and becomes the superheroes by correcting law and perfecting our innocent lifestyle by protecting all lives here on earth, by encouraging everyone by sharing the Winston movement worldwide. It's very simple. All we have to do is pay the restaurants to quickly transition their current recipes into vegan plant-based meal recipes by issuing out EBT cards, which is electronic benefits transfer, to every person within the city to be used for state benefits by simply adding restaurant food benefits and for it to be used like a debit card from a bank. Every person within that household, or if you live by yourself, we provided a list of different small and big restaurants that they can purchase any breakfast, lunch, and dinner from each restaurant, but only those 3 different meals for each person from every listed restaurant. This is so that you get to try a different variety of restaurants, and all we will require is for them to be given their honest feedback and given reviews by filling out a question survey, rating the meals from 1 to 10, with 10 being perfect and 1 being needs help, and write any ideas of what the recipe could use to perfect it. Now, every restaurant needs help, and not every restaurant and grocery store will throw away like all the dead animals and vertebrate products and replace it with vegan plant-based products.
Nicole, you've gone mute on us.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry. I think it accidentally pressed, but okay, so every grocery store will give out free samples also to try the best vegan plant-based recipes. These recipes will be packaged together and sold with all the ingredients that requires to cook it, and we'll have a recipe card inside the packaging that will have a list of all the ingredients, measurements, and temperature to cook it at, as well as website video tutorial that shows you step by step on how to prepare and cook these meals. There will be contests for all the chefs, small and big restaurants, as well as small and big grocery stores to win awards and make more money. The prices for all the vegan plant-based foods needs to be made extremely affordable so that everyone can enjoy this wonderful, innocent transition of experiencing the correct new way of eating. And the new restaurant.
And you've gone mute once more.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so the new restaurants need to be based on organic new laws and mindfulness on how to cook and prepare to serve the vegan and all natural foods. You know, we have to care about all the living species, and there needs to be some gut instinct feeling with the common sense knowing to not murder any animals, vertebrates, or humans. You know, you're not supposed to eat humans, animals, and vertebrates, and there must be an ultimate penalty and penitence in an attempt to actually doing these, the one of two of these very inhumane, wrong, and evil things. You know, we must create a conversation that doesn't fall on deaf ears, but caters to the steps that can be taken to a new set of direction for selecting the right foods when the masses can follow and be encouraged to eat vegan. The human body is, yes.
I've given you a little grace period because of your audio issues, but you're over 3 minutes now.
Okay, it's just like a few seconds a few sentences I have left, if that was okay.
We really need to respect our time, but thank you for your comments tonight.
All right, you're welcome.
Appreciate it. For council's benefit, I've been informed by our city manager that because of her connection issues, she's asked Ms. Tweedy from Community Development to manage the meeting on behalf of staff tonight. Who's next on our visitor comment list, please?
Our next speaker is Wendy Kroger.
Wendy Kroger, welcome.
Hi there. How are you?
We can hear you.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Well, I just wanted to say that the Friends of Cooper Mountain have provided you with lots of information in written comments, so I'm not going to go over any of that other than to say that it's there. We really appreciate your time, and we appreciate the time that it took for all of you to take a look at what we've provided. We've been working with staff. We're happy with Casara's been wonderful to work with. I want to give her kudos because she has been. We also have partners with the Tualatin River Keepers, Audubon, Tree Keepers of Washington County, several NACs, and CPO 6. So I just wanted to let you know that a fair number of us are very interested in what's going on with the community plan at Cooper Mountain. We would love to help in any way we can because we think it's an absolutely gorgeous area that we want protected for its significant natural resources. The only request I would make is that if any of you are happening to speak with Juan Carlos or with Garrett, both from Metro, in the next few days or month, please let them know that we really, really, really want them to go buy some land because that would solve a lot of our problems. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for being there and have a great meeting.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kroger, for your comments and for your past service to both the city and the Tualatin Hills Park and Rec District. Do we have any others wanting to speak to the council tonight?
Yes, Council President, it looks like we have Scott Miller.
Mr. Miller, whenever you're ready.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hey, okay, so we're kind of in a rush trying to make this get on here, but I think the Cobies are all listening. They've got the Kobe farm there. And so we've had some conversations with AKS Engineering, and our major concern is the, obviously I think you know the amount of land that we're looking at the preferred approach concept map, and the amount of land that is in a kind of undefined light green that we think a lot of that should be in the yellow. And so we've had AKS out there doing some surveys and getting back to us, but obviously our concern is that things seem to be moving forward quite a bit without our input. And I know that part of that is on us because we got to the table late, but we wanted to make sure you guys know that we're out here and wanting to stay involved as much as possible. And we have significant concerns about that amount of green area around on the property.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. As you probably know from looking at our materials, tonight is a work session where council will be giving general direction. Still ahead of us are public hearings at the Planning Commission and a future public hearing at the City Council. So there's quite a bit of road ahead of you, and it is definitely worth your while to engage with our staff.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
You bet. Next up on our list to speak to the council.
I believe those are all the speakers for tonight, Council President.
Okay, let me just ask the public who might be watching and listening, is there anyone else that wishes to address the council at this time in visitor comment? Seeing none, we will move on then. Council items. Is there anyone on the council tonight who wishes to bring up something for the benefit of other councilors or the public?
Hey, yeah, I did. I just had a quick question. I just saw today's email for an invitation to the Benchmark City Tour from the mayor. Wanted to just get a sense of where folks are on being able to go somewhere off-site. If you know what I'm talking about, it's the September 30th to October 2nd in Bend.
Like, are you curious if we want to go, available to go?
Available to go.
I am out of country during that time.
Yeah, I just saw it prior to the meeting as well, and will be attending a different work function, so I will not be able to attend that either.
If I happen to be in Bend on vacation, I might visit as a visitor, but I won't be on the council anymore. So
don't mind us. I have to check my work schedule, but I would like to go.
Okay. I was just going to say, I definitely would love to participate in something like this. I'm worried that it might be too soon in terms of planning, in terms of like us being able to attend. So I'm hoping that there might be an opportunity for us to discuss how we could definitely do something like that, but maybe potentially works for all of our calendars.
Well, let me just say though that I'm glad that it's been set up because I've spent a lot of time in Bend over the last 8 or 9 years. We have some very good friends who live down there, and we spend a lot of holiday and vacation time down in Bend. And the people that we know have been involved with neighborhood planning organizations like our NACs and are pretty well connected to this interesting relationship that Bend City has with Bend Park and Rec. And I think that there's a lot to learn there that is both similar and different from the relationship we have with THPRD. So could
Cool.
be potentially interesting. Any other council items?
Yeah, night market this Saturday. For those of you listening, our really big event this Saturday, Beaverton Night Market. Check it out. Plan for parking and or alternative ways to get downtown. Parking can be kind of crazy.
Yeah,
That's it.
even with a new parking garage, there
Even
probably
with a new
isn't going to
parking
be enough local space.
That's true.
But it is a wonderful event, and let's remind ourselves that Councillor Kimmy was involved in establishing the very first night market.
Thank you, Councillor Kim.
Any other council items? Okay, do we have any items from staff? Our city manager is listening, but she has turned over the administrative gavel to Ms. Tweedy. Ms. Tweedy, do we have anything else from staff?
Good evening. I'm not aware of any, but because I've just recently been anointed to be your staff lead, I guess I would ask the other department heads who are in the meeting if they have any comments for council this evening.
I'm seeing a rush to the microphones here. Okay, that's usually an indicator that we don't have any.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll call that good. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. In that case, our next item is the consent agenda, and our normal tradition is that I would be reading the consent agenda as a motion, but that's not going to happen tonight. Who would like to step up and take on this one?
I can do it.
All right.
And I
Really?
do believe, yeah,
Do you know what to pull?
no, I didn't know.
I haven't heard anything about pulling an item, so can you tell us which one you want pulled, please?
I'm looking for it. Can we pull 22181?
22181, that's the cooperative agreement with OTBC. Okay.
Thank you.
As tradition, because we have a new counselor, I'm going to separate the motions. So first, I'll move that we approve the meeting minutes from the regular meetings of October 12th and November 2nd, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the minutes from those two meetings. Any discussion about the minutes or comments?
And for context, Councillor Kimmy, you can abstain because you weren't at the meetings.
Okay, would the recorder kindly call the roll?
Councillor Hassan,
Yes.
Councillor Hartmeyer-Prieg,
Yes.
Councillor Sansucci,
Yes.
Councillor Tivnan,
Yes.
motion carries 4-0 with 2
Next motion,
abstaining.
please.
Yes, I move that we approve the consent agenda as listed on the agenda, with the exception of removing agenda item 22181 from the consent agenda.
Very good. There is no requirement in our code or otherwise that all of the items on the consent agenda be read out loud as we traditionally do. So that motion holds. Does someone
Second.
hear a second? All right, we have a second from Councillor Hassan. Any discussion on other items on the consent agenda?
I would just like to make one comment. I had a conversation with our interim chief today just to talk a little bit more about the mental health response team agenda bill, which I'm super excited about. I super support us looking at mental health and public safety collectively. There was just some general conversation around like continuing to evolve the conversation around what public safety looks like in our community. And we're going to continue to have that conversation. So I just want to share that because I think it's important that our community hears that. We've invested in this mental health response team. It's step one. That's not the end. There is no finish line. We'll continue to reimagine what it means to ensure every single person in our community feels safe.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments on the consent agenda? Once again, will the recorder kindly call the roll?
Councillor Hassan,
Yes.
Councillor Kimmy,
Yes.
Councillor Hartmeyer-Prieg,
Yes.
Councillor Sansucci,
Yes.
Councillor Tivnan,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, and then we will take up Agenda Bill 22181, authorizing the city manager to sign a cooperative agreement with the Oregon Technology Business Center, OTBC, let's start with the question that you have, Councillor Hassan, and I know we have people here who can probably speak to any questions that you raise.
Yeah, so I just had general questions around like how we identify organizations to recruit and work with us in the city. And so I'm looking at our agenda and I know we have a long night. So rather than asking questions, I'm going to make a couple comments and then I'll just stop. I want us to be really intentional about how we're recruiting our businesses. I think OTBC is doing an amazing job and I just want to make sure we continue to push that forward. I think thinking about work from a DEI and inclusion lens, the Startup Challenge is really amazing work that we do. However, one of the requirements to participate in the Startup Challenge is that a person is supposed to be working on the business full time. I understand that, but there is a privilege in a person being able to work on a business full time that we have to acknowledge, right? Like that is for someone that has the ability to do that. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to ask staff and OTBC to ensure that as we continue to evolve OTBC, that we're really adding a strong DEI lens in how we recruit, identify, and help organizations continue to incubate in the city of Beaverton.
So I'd like to invite Mr. McCright, who is with us tonight, to answer how the recruitment of the Startup Challenge companies takes place. But let me just add one quick historical note for anybody who's watching. The city started OTBC. It wasn't an outside organization that came to the city looking for help to do with what it was doing. The city started it for a very specific purpose, which is to do what it's doing. So it really is an addendum to the city's operation. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. McCright to describe how the Startup Challenge companies are recruited.
Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Good. Okay. Yeah, thank you for that question, Councillor. I think that issue is a high priority with our board, and we have been discussing that a lot. We have reached out, as you're aware, in the last year or two or three, particularly to women entrepreneurs. We have 4 of our 5 companies for this year's cohort are women entrepreneurs who founded the company or is a co-founder. And we have met with a number of organizations that we're talking with to recruit people they know that would be interested in starting a business, who are what is commonly considered in the underserved community for startup businesses. And that, you know, includes persons of color, women, BIPOC interests. So we are reaching out, and as we open the application process in the middle, actually at the end, the last week of August, we will be specifically asking all of the councilors, the mayor, other organizations within the city to recommend people to us and encourage people to apply. And most of the majority of our investors are persons that would be considered in the minority, either ethnically or well, mainly ethnically, but basically there's a good understanding among our investors for the need to address this issue. And also, we met with Councilor-elect Duger last week, and as you know, he's director of global diversity for Nike, and he offered to meet with our board and really discuss in some detail his work for Nike in regard to global diversity and how to reach out to different communities. So we're looking forward to having him come and meet with our board and have that discussion. Quickly, as to the issue of full-time work, obviously, given what we've been through the last couple of years with the COVID situation, and certainly the work environment has changed a lot, we obviously, the investors prefer that someone is devoting full time to their business. We are giving them anywhere from $20,000 to $25,000 cash as one of the 5 winners, which would give them a little runtime to work on their business idea full time, and hopefully then raise more money as they validate the market and take their product or service to market. So we're flexible in that regard, but from the investor's viewpoint, obviously they want somebody committed to the business, and we hope that the money that we invest in these startups will give them some run time to possibly take a leave of absence or leave their current job and work full time on the job and to build the company, because that's in the interests of all of us.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know there's no perfection in how this is done. I just always want to challenge us, right? Like who are we missing? Who has access to us? Who doesn't have access to us? Who are we here to serve? And just make sure we're always asking those questions so that we are finding those sort of places that maybe those places that we haven't looked. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you. We'll be back in touch with you to get some recommendations. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
With that, do we have a motion with respect to this item?
Council President, I actually just wanted to add a comment in support of what Councilor Husson said. The city of Beaverton is one of the investors, and we as a council get to help direct how those funds are spent. So Mr. McCray, I do hope you hear, if you're hearing from the council that this is maybe a criteria that should be reconsidered. Like I do hope you will take that back and talk about it, because we're living in a time of great inflation, of a time where wages are not keeping up with people's, basic needs. So as much as it's idealistic to say hopefully our investment gives them that space to be committed full time, I just don't know how realistic that is for people right now. So my dog is passionate about this too. So, I just think it's important, like what Councilor Husson said, it's a really important point. So I guess it was just something that worth consideration.
Oh, absolutely. And we when we meet and mentor and help train the entrepreneurs that are selected by the investors for the investment, we try to work closely with them to enable them to generate enough revenue fairly quickly so that they can be free to spend full time on their business. It will take, maybe it'll take a year to really launch the business to that point, but we are working closely with them to achieve that, because that's how the company grows, is if they grow their revenue and grow their customer list.
And I'll just add a comment, because I do sit on the board over at OTBC and have for about 10 years now, that the recruitment process also involves the city doing its own marketing through our economic development team, because the economic development team is usually quite involved. In fact, one of the other board members at OTBC is Bill Bird from our economic development team. And Bill is, in addition, one of the members of the evaluation team that goes through the 50 to 60 applicants for each startup challenge and helps winnow them down to appropriate finalists for the investors to consider. So the city already has a pretty good hand in how that goes, but it's absolutely the right thing for us to be doing is to be keeping an eye on who's applying, how are we reaching them, and how are we selecting who it is. But so far the results have been really good, and I'm personally pleased with the way that the cohorts have evolved from cohort 1 to cohort today. We'll see what happens at the end of August of this year. And with that, do we want to consider a motion? So moved. We have a motion to approve Agenda Bill 221180 and a second from Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg. And thank you for making that motion, because Councilor Tivnon and I are both on the board at OTBC, and it would be nicer to have you two make that motion. So any further comment?
Yeah, let's clarify for the record.
22181 is the agenda bill.
And Councilor Tivnon seconded.
Yes, agenda bill 2.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Sorry, the link line is underneath the text. I misplaced it. Very good. And with no further comment, we'll ask the city attorney to call the roll.
Councilor Hassan.
Yes.
Councilor Kimmy.
Yes.
Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Yes.
Councilor Sansucci.
Yes.
Councilor Tivnon.
Yes.
Motion carries.
That's great. Thank you very much. That takes care of our consent agenda. We are now going to go to a public hearing, and I have a script that I need to read. courtesy of our city attorney. So the next item on our agenda is a public hearing regarding a resolution adopting a supplemental budget allocating American Rescue Plan Act matching funding for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2022, and making appropriations therefrom. Before we begin the public hearing, I'll ask the city attorney to explain how people can participate in this hearing.
Councilor, anyone wishing to speak at this hearing should follow the instructions included on tonight's agenda. To call in, dial 1-669-254-5252. You'll be asked to enter tonight's meeting ID, which is 160-046-6518, followed by the pound sign, and a participant ID number, which is 071922, also followed by the pound sign. Once you join the meeting, you can enter *9 to let the city recorder know you wish to speak. Alternatively, if you have joined the meeting already online, you can let the city recorder know that you wish to speak by clicking on the raise hand feature. Each member of the public who speaks at this hearing is allotted a maximum of 3 minutes. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. For this item, do we have a staff presentation before we open the public hearing?
Yes, Councilor Sansucci, council members. My name is Susan Cole. I'm the Assistant Finance Director for the city and sitting in for City Manager since she was having some technical issues this evening. So as the council may recall, you did allocate the funding from Tranche 2 at the June 21st council meeting. However, due to the dollar amount, the Oregon budget law does require a public hearing because we're transferring $2.2 million out of the contingency for this particular fund, which is over the 15% threshold. And so that is why we're having a public hearing this evening. Everything else as is, it was on June 21st.
And the agenda bill has a fairly detailed description of how we decided back in June to allocate those funds. So this is the formal action necessary for us to actually accomplish that movement of monies from one place in our budget to the other. So any questions for staff before we open the public hearing? All right, I will now open the public hearing. City Recorder, is there anyone wishing to testify?
No, Councilor Sansucci, no one.
Since there are no members of the public wishing to comment on this matter tonight, we are going to skip ahead in the script and close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of the council? Is there a motion?
I move that the council adopt resolution 4807, a resolution adopting supplemental budget allocating ARPA matching funding for the fiscal year commencing July 1, 2022, and making appropriations therefrom as described in Agenda Bill 22184.
And is it seconded?
Second.
And a second from Councilor Tivnon. Discussion, comments on this item? Hearing none, let's move to a roll call from the city recorder, please.
Councilor Hassan.
Yes.
Councilor Kimmy.
Yes.
Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Yes.
Councilor Sansucci.
Yes.
Councilor Tivnon.
Yes.
Motion carries.
That's great. Thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Cole. We now go to an infrequent agenda item, which is consideration of options regarding the upcoming vacancy in City Council Position 5, which has my name on it right now. But I have announced my intent to depart the City Council seat at the end of August, and the council has to decide what it wants to do about the months of September, October, November, and December. We already are in high probability going to be seeing somebody sworn in January. But Mr. Kirby, do you want to run the council through the options for consideration tonight?
Excuse me, yes, it's fine. would just point out that there's really two questions to be answered. First of all, you want to fill the vacancy. You're not required to fill the vacancy. You could wait until January. And once you decide that question, the next question is, well, if you do want to fill the vacancy, who to fill the vacancy? It does not have to be a unanimous decision. It can be, of course. But if it is not a unanimous decision, it would be subject to a vote, and that person would be chosen. We're also trying to make clear for the record that this would be a formal decision of the council. You can make the decision tonight if you wanted to, but if there is an appointment to be made for the purposes of formality, I would come back at a next council meeting and have a resolution that would be formally adopted so that the decision of the council can be easily located in the records of the city. Other than that, I think the agenda bill describes everything, and if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them. Otherwise, I think it's a discussion for council.
And I'll start it off with just a brief comment because I don't need to vote on this because this is for replacing me, and I just don't feel like I should be voting. But I will say that there are two of us here in this council meeting who were appointed to fill council seats before they were officially sworn in after an election. One of them was me back in November of 2008, and the other was Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg. So this is something that the council has done frequently in the past, and there have been other times when we waited for election results. Sort of depends on the circumstances. With that, who would like to comment, if anybody?
I dropped my name in the chat.
Okay. Councilor Husson, please feel free.
Yeah. Yes, we would like to fill the appointment. I think if you didn't feel my energy coming through the camera, it was there. You know, I believe that Councilor-elect, and I don't want to butcher his last name, but John Duggar did win that seat, and I think it would be appropriate for us to appoint him as soon as he is available or able to do so. So I say yes to doing the appointment. I think our council needs some stability, you know, not that there hasn't been any, but just in as we move forward in this new form of government. And I support us bringing in the person who got the most votes for position 5.
Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Yep, I will second that. And I really, this is the second of a brief window where we've had a full 7-member council. And I agree, like it would be great to stay a 7-member council, or at least have a brief window depending on Councilor-elect Duggar's availability. But yes, I agree.
Councilor Tivnon.
Yep. They both said everything that I would have said, so not going to rehash it. In full agreement.
Councilor Kimmy, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I would like to see John Duggar sworn in as soon as possible, and then because if you wait until January, there's going to be so many new people coming in at one time, and you need a little bit more time to get used to the council and the meetings and get to know people. So more time you have, I think it's better. And then the staff doesn't have to scramble to educate every one of us. And I've been grateful to all the staff who's taking time with me to educate me, but then it'll be easier if they don't have to do it so many times at one time. So I'll be for appointing John to the city council. Thank you.
So before I ask for a motion, I'm going to be Mr. Fussy Detail and just remind everybody that John Duggar has not actually been elected to the seat yet. He's been nominated, and he will be on the ballot again in November, but he will be unopposed, and the outcome of that election is pretty much a certainty. So with that, does somebody care to make a motion on this tonight?
I can make the motion to appoint John Duggar to seat 5.
Effective
September 1, pending his availability.
Second.
And we have a second. Is that motion to form, Mr. City Attorney?
Yeah, that is fine. That's direction, and take a vote, and I will prepare something that memorializes that for the consent agenda, assuming it passes.
Any further comment on the motion? Okay, roll call, please.
Councillor Hassan.
Yes.
Councillor Kinney.
Yes.
Councillor Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Yes.
Councillor Tivnon.
Yes.
And for the record, I'm
Councillor
abstaining from this one.
Sansucci.
So.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I'm sure Mr. Duggar will be alerted by the appropriate authorities that his time is coming, although he already probably suspected. We'll see.
Council President.
We now are moving into
Sansucci.
one of, pardon me?
Excuse me, I would just like to report, we've had our closed captioning people looking into the issue. Closed captioning is working. They reset the closed captioning button. So if anyone is watching the meeting now and needs closed captioning, it should show on your screen. You should be able to access the service.
Terrific. Thank you very much. We're entering a section of our agenda where we announce some upcoming public hearings for ordinances of the city. None of these ordinances are being addressed formally tonight, but I'll be announcing the dates of the public hearings and the subject matter. So we'll begin with Agenda Bill 22186, announcing that on August 2nd, 2022, during the regularly scheduled City Council meeting, a public hearing will be held on an ordinance amending Beaverton City Code Section 2.01.040, Emergency and Disaster Declarations, to authorize the city manager to declare an emergency. And for that and for all of these ordinances that I'm going to announce, the public is welcome to go to the City Council's page, read the draft ordinances, and prepare comments for those public hearing dates. The second announcement, Agenda Bill 22187, on August 2nd, also 2022, during the regularly scheduled City Council meeting, a public hearing will be held regarding an ordinance amending the Beaverton Development Code relating to vehicle uses in the Downtown Design District, TA 2021-0006. And the third announcement is Agenda Bill 22187. Whoops, I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong link again. Agenda Bill 22188. On August 16th, 2022, during the regularly scheduled City Council meeting, a public hearing will be held regarding an ordinance annexing properties at 11375 and 11475 Southwest Walker Road, withdrawing the properties from the Tualatin Valley Water District, Washington County Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, and Washington County Urban Road Maintenance District, and adding the properties to the Central Beaverton Neighborhood Association Committee, ANX 2022-0002. And with that, we are skipping an item that got pulled from the agenda and moving to a work session on the Cooper Mountain Community Plan Preferred Approach, which is Agenda Bill 22190. And I believe we're starting with Senior Planner Casara Phipps and our Long Range Planning Manager, Brian Martin.
Great. Good evening, councilors. I'm going to share my screen here. All right, are you seeing that okay?
Yes.
Great. So good evening, I'm Casara Phipps, Senior Planner with the city, and I'm here tonight to provide an overview on the draft preferred approach for the Cooper Mountain Community Plan. So to get started, this map shows the 1,200 acre project area that's located near the southwest corner of existing city limits. This effort will result in a plan for the area that lays out how future growth will occur over time. And for the city to tee up that future development, we need to determine zoning and utility provision. So tonight we're going to focus on the first, zoning, as well as transportation. The draft preferred approach provides the basis for upcoming studies, including the traffic impact analysis, utility modeling, and we have to do some analysis for statewide Planning Goal 5 that relates to natural resources. Over the coming months, city staff anticipate beginning that body of technical work and asking community members for input on the draft preferred approach. Findings from engagement and analysis may very well result in some refinements to the preferred approach for council consideration this fall. And this winter, the project team will write land use policies and code that helps implement the preferred approach. We expect that the draft community plan and funding plan will be ready before spring, with the goal of adopting the final plan by the end of this fiscal year. And this graphic shows, based on what we learn from that technical work and council direction, we may need to do some iterations just so we, learn from council direction and from the technical work. And there may be decisions made based on the funding plan as well that cause us to go back and make some changes. Right, that brings us to tonight. We've come a long way in the last couple of years, but there are still a lot of decisions that need to be made. Many of these kind of have a domino effect. They rely on earlier council guidance. So tonight we would like to ask for your input on the draft preferred approach for Cooper Mountain. First, to see if you have any comments or questions, and second, to make sure that the concept map and the outcomes that are described in your materials are really headed in the right direction for that technical work that will follow. Right, so I'm gonna jump back and go to kind of how did we get to where we're at today? We started with 3 plan alternatives, and the process was really intended to show the different ways the city could plan for Cooper Mountain and to highlight trade-offs between natural resources, housing supply, and transportation connections. So when we came to council last April, we shared the findings from our alternatives evaluation, as well as key themes from our engagement on those 3 plan alternatives. We heard from council at that time that the city should provide adequate flexibility for property owners and for developers. There was strong support for commercial opportunities in the plan area. We heard that we should plan for more than the minimum amount of housing, that is 3,760 units. And we heard from council that this project is really an opportunity to do things differently by prioritizing equity, active transportation, and natural resource protection. So the draft preferred approach is really the project team's first attempt at trying to incorporate council direction and to apply what we've learned through the alternatives evaluation and previous work. Right, the slide shows the concept map for the draft preferred approach. The concept map shows different land uses, densities, and outcomes of the preferred approach. We purposely grouped commercial uses, parks, and higher density residential uses in a certain location to try to create these centers of activity. The different uses and densities are also distributed across Cooper Mountain neighborhoods. The road and trail network that's shown on this map is intended to connect neighborhoods to destinations like parks and commercial areas, and hopefully future transit routes. And we also developed this map with flexibility in mind, which is really described through the zoning approach that's included in your materials for tonight. Since looking at a map doesn't quite tell the full story about a place, I'm going to ask you to imagine what the experience of someone living in one of these neighborhoods might be. So we have a little push pin in the Grabhorn Meadows neighborhood. Here you might find single detached homes, middle housing types, and apartments all within close proximity to one another. Maybe there's a small business down the street, or the kind of flexible zoning allows for commercial uses in Grabhorn Meadow. There's a neighborhood park, and the McKernan Creek Trail is nearby. And then there are also multiple ways to get to the larger commercial center down at Tile Flat Road. So these are some of the outcomes of the preferred approach, and I'm going to describe those in a bit more detail. We'll go through kind of thematically. So first is housing. The preferred approach includes a range of 4,500 to 5,200 total housing units. Part of the reason for that range is that with the new middle housing rules that are in effect as part of the Housing Options Project, we know that there's a bit of uncertainty because owners may choose to change their property or to subdivide over time. So it's likely kind of that 5,200 may be a long-term kind of upper end of that range. The preferred approach also aims to provide housing variety, and in part, that is achieved through requiring, not just allowing, middle housing types. So the preferred approach assumes that developers would be required to build a certain amount of middle housing types. And then last, a requirement that housing types are integrated within the same neighborhoods. So building duplexes and single detached homes and townhomes really within close proximity to one another, rather than separating them by type within each neighborhood. The housing outcomes also include a target for 10% of the total units as regulated affordable housing. And that could include both rental and home ownership units. This is likely going to be another one of those kind of long-term implementation efforts that's going to require partnerships and funding to make happen. The housing outcomes also include multi-unit dwellings. These could be apartments or other products that are more than 5 units. And they are not concentrated in one neighborhood, but rather spread across Cooper Mountain. For commercial, we kind of have three different types or 3 scales of commercial uses or areas. The first is the neighborhood commercial centers. There's one at 175th and Weir and a second at Tile Flat Road. These are areas where commercial uses are required. They're roughly 5 acres each in size. And the second type of commercial is really a flexible kind of mixed use zone where it allows commercial, but it is not required. So if the market is there to allow for either expansion of those commercial centers or to locate commercial uses in neighborhoods that might be farther away from Tile Flat or farther away from 175th and Weir, this flexible mixed use zoning would also support additional commercial uses. And then third, we have this concept of very small scale commercial uses within residential neighborhoods to provide more opportunities for people to start and grow their own business and opportunities for people to access goods and services near where they live. Outcomes for parks. We have also 3 different types of parks identified. The first are neighborhood parks. These are smaller in scale. We've identified at least one within each of the 9 Cooper Mountain neighborhoods. We have 1 new community park, and those are larger in acreage and really intended to serve a broader population. And it's currently shown in the Cooper Lowlands neighborhood. And then last, we have 2 urban plazas. They're about 1/2 acre in size, and each is located next to those commercial centers. I do want to emphasize that the park locations and sizes are very conceptual, so they are subject to funding, to partnerships and negotiation with property owners and developers, and we're coordinating with Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District on park and trail planning. Transportation outcomes. We show trails really as a means of transportation, not just for recreation. So the trails connect to major destinations in the area, including commercial areas and parks. The McKernan Creek Greenway is really a signature project for the area, and it's also a regional trail. It provides a transportation connection, but also a connection to nature for people who live and visit here with views of the Chehalem Mountains and neighborhoods below. The McKernan Creek corridor also provides important habitat for wildlife and is an opportunity to implement innovative stormwater approaches that really put water back in streams and help enhance the existing stream system. The road network that's shown in the preferred approach attempts to provide connectivity while also limiting the number of creek crossings. And finally, natural resource outcomes. We, through our inventory, know that there are many types of natural resources in the area. There are creeks, forested areas, prairies, and wildlife corridors. We're trying to balance resource protection with needed housing. In doing so, this is likely going to require new policies as well as new rules. We don't know what our approach for natural resource protection is just yet, so we plan to return to council this fall, recognizing this is such a complex aspect of this project and an important one as well. So we do have a work session scheduled with council this fall, really to focus on natural resource protection. The agenda materials also include draft land use and zoning maps for Cooper Mountain. The zoning map that's shown on this slide identifies the different residential and commercial base zones, which largely mirror what's shown on the preferred approach concept map. I do want to point out that parks have residential zoning designations as well. This is because the city doesn't have a parks or institutional zone. So this residential zone is really consistent with how we've approached parks and other areas of the city. This map also shows two different areas that require further study, and these are the zoning overlays. First is the significant natural resource area overlay, or SNRA. We know that there are going to be higher levels of protection in the SNRAs because they are higher value resources, including the streams themselves. The conservation residential overlay, which is shown as kind of the hatched on this map, includes lower quality resource areas, areas that are farther away from the streams that might be heavily forested, or areas that are simply adjacent to those higher quality resource areas, or SNRAs. So we do not have a proposal for what development would be within either of these overlay zones at this time. That's something that we hope to bring to council for future discussion this fall. And next steps. First, we want to ask community members what they think of the preferred approach and how we implement it as well, because there are a lot of things that we still need to figure out. And that includes the zoning and code, how to approach natural resource protection, how roads and utilities will serve the area. And then we also need to develop cost and revenue estimates for infrastructure. And these are all going to plug into that funding plan. Some important dates coming up. We have a Planning Commission work session on August 10th, where we'll really cover the materials that we did here tonight. And then we have two upcoming work sessions with City Council. The first on August 16th, that will focus more on zoning. And in particular, how do we achieve the small scale commercial, the middle housing requirements, and then how do you also make sure that different housing types are built and integrated into the same neighborhoods. And then the second work session on October 18th to discuss natural resources. Right, that concludes my presentation. I'm interested in whatever thoughts or questions you have on the preferred approach, and if this really is headed in the right direction in terms of the outcomes and concept map.
Great. I will look at the chat to see who wants to speak. I'm going to throw two quick comments in, or a comment and a question in first. First, for the benefit of those who have submitted testimony to the council in advance of this meeting, please take note that the staff is going to be going out and doing a substantial amount of public engagement, plus there are a number of other opportunities coming ahead to engage with the Planning Commission and the City Council on these things. And let me ask you, Ms. Phipps, the thing you didn't have on your next steps list is when you think there may be actually final materials that will be subject to public hearing and decision making by the Planning Commission that for their consideration and referral to the council.
Yes, we are a little behind because of our utility planning. It was delayed, but early 2023 is when we anticipate having some of those drafts of the actual community plan document. But we will likely go through work sessions before we actually hold the public hearings, ideally next spring.
Great, thank you. And with that, Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg, you're first.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Casera, for the presentation. We got so much helpful, useful public testimony about this topic. I'm really grateful, first of all, to see all of the input. Like, I really feel like this draft preferred approach is reflective of the input we've given. I am really grateful to see some of those overlays where we anticipate additional, kind of, I think it was the conservation residential I really love that hybrid, you know, kind of we can do both. We can preserve and create safe places for people to live. I feel like a lot of my questions are around the natural resources, you know, components. And so you mentioned that we will be doing something in the fall, more specifically around natural resource protection planning. And I guess I'm kind of curious, like, what is the consequence of that? Like, are we going to be able to change the maps in the draft preferred approach based, you know, like, I want to make sure we're not doing that too late.
Right. Yeah, we will be able to change the maps. Right now, we have not assumed much development within those natural resource areas. And there are different types of resources. There are riparian areas, which really just mean they're by the creeks, and then there's upland habitat. So we tried to take a very kind of methodical approach in how we applied those overlays by, you know, putting the higher quality resources as the more protected ones and allowing development in others. But I think, you know, some of the questions that we'll be bringing to council this fall are kind of, what are the approaches that you want to take? Is it to preserve, to allow development, but then focus on mitigation? And so we'll be really laying out those different options for discussion this October.
Okay. Yeah, I think, you know, when we went up to the Wish Camper groundbreaking, one of the things that just is striking is like, there are massive, massive, beautiful trees. And no amount of mitigation, if we cut those down, is going to catch up, not in our lifetimes, you know? So to me, when I'm hearing from our community about the preservation of our natural resources, you know, and I don't remember which one, where she was talking about, like, you know, even in our maps, there's been some areas that have already been kind of stripped, that white oaks have been removed. Like it's a very special, you know, tree in significance in this area, and we need to preserve those. So I think my follow-up question is just, you know, I know there's a lot of green space around the creek, but I'm curious, like, do we have an estimate on acreage of how much of the natural space like will be preserved? And, you know, I know that funding and partnership is critical for the expansion of Cooper Mountain Nature Park, but it is truly like it's an oasis in our community, right? It's so special. And I know that sometimes, you know, initial planning isn't always how things end up, but I do think that, like, if we can contribute to the preservation of the natural space, of the natural habitat, of potentially this expansion of Cooper Mountain Nature Park, like, that part is pretty important to me. And so that's my biggest question in the preferred approach right now.
Mm-hmm. And we can definitely follow up with some of that information on, you know, the acreages, and break it down by the different kind of types of natural resource areas.
Thank you.
Councillor Tibnon.
Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree with what Councillor Hartmeyer just said about the white oaks and this preemptive clear cutting that we're starting to hear about. I've driven down by the new high school, Mountainside High, and have noticed, if you're going west on Shoals Ferry and you see the housing development that started going up about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little more than that, of single family homes, there's some massively huge white oaks that were preserved in that complex. I'd love to see as much of our larger, older trees preserved as possible. How can we encourage that or mandate that throughout this area is something I'm really curious about. And then also to the nature park and to that area in general, it's not just a crown jewel for us as far as having this amazing open space for our residents and visitors to enjoy. It's critical habitat, and it's a wildlife corridor. And I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we're preserving that forever. And so I'm really happy with the way that the preferred approach has taken shape based on the conversations, where the transportation grid is proposed to be, that you really did listen and incorporated a lot of the feedback you're getting from us. I also am hearing it loud and clear from folks that are reaching out to us via email. I've had folks ask me about it in conversation just out in the community. This area is very important environmentally to folks in our community, and it's you know, it's our task now to figure out how we preserve that and still get housing built. So thank you for combining all of that into something that I think is ready for the community to look at and weigh in on. I'm very, very curious what their additional thoughts are, and maybe filling in spots that we missed in our conversations. The other thing that I just wanted to call out was the mixed use commercial areas that have been added in, and the description you gave of them is the part I think I'm most excited about, is the idea of a little tiny family grocery store being able to go in, like Ross Island grocery store that's down in, I think it's John's Landing in Southeast Portland. You know, it's like you're in the middle of a neighborhood and then all of a sudden there's this little shop and you can go in and you can grab a bite to eat and you can see your neighbors and catch up. It's tiny, it's small, but it's there, it's very walkable, and it is meant for the people that live there. And I love the idea of us creating those gathering spaces for people, creating business opportunities for people that ideally live in the neighborhood, but also creating things that people can walk to or bike to instead of driving to, because for the bigger stuff, we're probably going to see people still having to jump in their cars, but to be able to give them options close to home is great. And it just creates a really vibrant landscape too. That's something I think we're all shooting for. So thank you for putting that in there as well. I'd be in favor of more of it personally. So, but that's it. That's my comments.
Thank you. Councilor Kimmy, you're next.
I thank you very much, and thank you, Casera, and all the team for bringing this together so far. I wasn't involved with the conversation until now, but I know there's a lot of work that was put in, and then a lot of thoughtful approach, and then community engagement for sure. There's few comments, I guess, question and comments that when I know we got a lot of emails from the public so far, and a lot of them are already living in Cooper Mountain and those areas. But then we are building almost minimum 3,400 homes to up to over 5,000 homes in there. But then I haven't heard any engagement for the minority communities and BIPOC communities in regards to that so far. And just wondering, what is the engagement plan for those communities? Because those people will be not those people, but everybody, right? Everybody will be coming in. So I like to see more engagement with the BIPOC community, immigrant refugee communities, and they're not going to come to the public meetings. We have to kind of reach out to them, go out to their community, and then get their feedback on what they want to see in the Cooper Mountain, number one. And also, regards to the transportation, is that my understanding is there's no real plan yet for public transit to come to near the area. And I like to see more active communication with the TriMet to see bus routes and anything that could be established so that the people who live there can walk or bike to the public transit, so they don't have to depend on the cars. So I love to see the people who live in Cooper Mountain area doesn't have to drive all the time to get to where they have to go. So that I also agree with Allison that I would love to see more commercial spaces where people can walk and enjoy their walks, not just in natural areas. And one other thing is there's a huge mountainside high school, and there's a lot of fields that public cannot access. So just wondering, what are the talks with the school district that maybe community can access their parks and their fields, number one. Number two is the Cooper Mountain Natural Park or area that every weekend or the days that are great, we have overflow of parking and people are parking on the side of the road. That's pretty dangerous. So just wondering, is there any more expansion of parking in the area so people can come and do not have to risk their lives walking on the side of the road where there's no sidewalk? So that would be my comment and a question. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I'll go in reverse order here. So for the parking, I'm not sure if that's something that Metro is considering, but we are through this process taking a look at our roadway designs. So it could be that certain types of streets or street locations provide on-street parking, which would be a bit safer than current conditions. Regarding the ball fields, that was really part of our reasoning for adding the new community park, because they tend to have athletic fields. And I agree, there's definitely a need for this community, but we can reach out to THPRD and the school district as well regarding the high school. For transit, we have engaged TriMet staff. They serve on the project technical advisory committee. Part of their guidance right now is really not planning the routes themselves, but kind of how do we, through this plan, create an environment that will hopefully one day attract transit service. And they're looking for density along transit routes, and they're looking for safe bike and pedestrian environment, and really a mix of uses. So it's not an entirely residential area, because then you only get kind of the peak morning and evening commute times. So that's another aspect of this this land use kind of pattern that's shown in the concept map, as we're trying to think about how the roads and the land use comes together to support transit. For engagement, I agree. Most people don't come to come to us, to the city events, and so that's something that through this project we have been going to the inclusive housing cohort for input on this project. Unite Oregon has been a great partner in this effort. They've helped us host multiple community events, some of them language specific, really to get input from BIPOC and other underserved community members. And that's part of why we actually made some of the recommendations that we do in the preferred approach. A couple of I'd say the housing variety, kind of requiring middle housing, that was something that was identified by community members as really contributing to more equitable outcomes, as was this idea of, how do you kind of weave different housing types together within the same neighborhood. So it's something that we need to continue, we need to improve on, but I think that our partnerships with Unite Oregon and the inclusive housing cohort have really provided invaluable input into this plan.
Thank you very much.
I'm just going to interject a really quick comment. Ms. Phipps, you may want to talk with colleagues and see if it would be useful to pass along information to the council about the Washington County Transit Study, which did look at South Cooper Mountain and possibly this part of Cooper Mountain, and come up with some at least preliminary ideas about how transit service might be extended down there. Councilor Hassan, you're up.
Hey everyone. Hi, thank you so much for this presentation. I have very few comments. I would say for the most part, what my other fellow councilors shared, I pretty much support. We did have an overwhelming amount of testimony around the plan and development, and I acknowledge that, with development comes change and some fear as to what's happening in the area. And so I want to make space for folks who might feel a little anxious about it. There were two sort of things I think that came up as a common theme in testimony, which was just that conversation around the protection of natural resources and the protection of the tree canopy, both which not only I support, but I think our counselors collectively support. So I just kind of want to echo that. And really just thinking about, we need housing, so we're going to have to develop. And so what does that look like? I really appreciate the inclusiveness in terms of thinking of our underserved communities, making sure we're being really intentional. I think Councilor Tivnon kind of alluded, right? Like, what does the transportation infrastructure look like so that it is, livable, reasonable? Those are all important. I'm going to stop because I feel like they really nailed it. But I did just want to take a moment and just call out the protection of the natural resources and the tree canopy, obviously within reason. We've got to continue to move forward with that development. Just out of curiosity, because I do think this is a helpful question for me, and I'm still going to say I'm new because I'm a year and a half in. What's the long game? Like we're in planning stages. Like, when does this actually, right? Because in my head, I'm like, this might not happen for how many years from now?
Yeah, before it's fully developed, I mean, there's so many factors. It could be 10 or 20 years. We don't know. And some of that really is tied to, how the city wants to implement infrastructure. We know that some property owners are ready to go. They want to develop. Others aren't. So there are a lot of factors, but yeah, we are in long range planning, so it's going to be a while.
So I think just for folks listening and even for our council to know that this is going to take some years to kind of continue to move forward. For myself and just for those listening, Sarah, could you just tell us what are the future, again, what's the future opportunities for us to engage so that folks can stay posted on this development?
Yes, so we have August 10th is Planning Commission work session, August 16th, City Council, and then we have October 18th is the Natural Resource Council work session, which will probably be of interest to a lot of folks.
Great, that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I have a few comments as well, but I want to start with a historical note in reference to what Councilor Hassan was just saying. Back when I was on the County Planning Commission, which I left at the beginning of 2014, I believe, we worked on the North Bethany Community Plan, which had, pretty much the same kinds of elements to it. Although I think that our approach here in South Cooper Mountain and in Cooper Mountain is a little bit more modern and sophisticated than it was back then, different paradigm back then. But I was up bicycling in North Bethany recently, and while there has been a lot of home development and a lot of apartment development, the central commercial district of North Bethany still has not yet developed out. And that plan was finalized in 2014. So it's been 8 years that it's been waiting for its opportunity to happen. These things can take a long time, and as Ms. Phipps said, there will be people jumping to go right away, but it'll be, a little here and a little there, and the likelihood of the whole thing being built out in any of your council terms is pretty slim. So these are generational projects. Now, to my specific comments, first of all, thank you for the work that you're doing with the natural resource overlays. I know there's going to be a lot of discussion and debate with the members of the community about where they should be and how restrictive they should be. But I want to get to a point that Councilor Tivnon made. The balance here is preserving resources versus getting housing built. And the reason we want to get housing built is because on planet Earth, population keeps going up. In the United States of America, population keeps going up. State of Oregon, City of Beaverton, Washington County, population keeps going up. We need places for people to live. We need places that are reasonable and that are hopefully reasonably priced. So that's why greater density was the preference of the council. That's why greater variety of housing type was the preference of the council. But figuring out how to do that in a way that doesn't impinge on the most valuable or even all of the partially valuable natural resources is challenging. Now, to my mind, and my thinking on this has evolved over 14, 15 years, one of the ways to do that is to encourage even higher than normal density in the areas where you're encouraging housing development, so that you can reduce the pressure on converting natural areas or potential resource areas into housing. And to my mind, that says that, this notion of medium to largish size lots with single family detached homes on them doesn't have to be the dominant element in an area like this. It can be a part of this. And the thing that kind of bugged me when I looked at this presentation, and I'll grind on this a little bit more in August when you come back to talk to us about zoning. Can you go back to the map that shows the zoning thing, just so I can make this point, and I'm not going to drill into it too hard. There's too much yellow on this map. There should be more of the orange and there should be more of the brown. That's my concern here. Let me ask you this. In the yellow sections, can you build an apartment building?
Not above 5 units. That would be in the orange and the brown.
And so what I have to ask is why? Why are we worried about that? Why do we think that an apartment building is incompatible with natural resource protection, that an apartment building is incompatible with use of a neighborhood commercial center, that an apartment building is incompatible with single family residential? When you go around to any city of size in this country, you see mixes of all of these things, neighborhoods right next to each other. When you go to even some of our neighboring cities, you often see, or our downtown area, you see things in proximity to each other that don't cause conflict. They're just not what people are accustomed to from times past. So my question is, and this is not something to answer tonight, but my question for this process is, why do we have to have little rectangles on this map instead of, say, a paradigm which says, if somebody has taken control of a big chunk of property, 20, 40 acres of property, they get assigned a certain amount of density. Like you need to figure out how to put 640 units on that property. And if they decide they can do that with a mixture of townhouses and apartment buildings and some single family residential, but it meets the density requirements and it preserves natural areas, why on earth would we complain about that? Because those people are in the business of creating homes that people want to rent or buy. And why do we want to say you got to put the apartments here when they might look at the property and say, it actually would work better over there? So the ability to shift things around, to maybe change the mix, to decide that based on this particular location, these view lines, this proximity to this or that, there's a better way to do things. I just think it's really hard in a planning process to decide where's the right place to put things. So that's why this map makes me nervous. And I'm going to think about it some more before our next rendezvous on this. But any quick thoughts in response?
I'd say we do want to provide some flexibility because you're right. Site conditions, the slopes, they're really going to help determine where the best places are to build some of these higher density uses. And so under this approach, that would probably be, it would require a map amendment to allow that change. So that's something that I think the project team can also think about and be prepared to discuss in August.
And we used to have this notion of planned unit developments, which I know that House Bill 20 whatever it was, kind of threw under the bus. But a 60-acre planned unit development, you could do that. You could shift densities around. You could mix housing types. You could do all sorts of things of that sort. And so I'm worried that we're going to be overly restrictive because of a few changes of paradigm and because of nervousness, perhaps, about putting things next to each other. So, yeah. I'm not trying to grind that to the floor tonight, but I just wanted to bring that up again. And then in the category of things that I'm going to bring up again, because I always have to bring it up, because I will not stop bringing it up until and I know this isn't in your control, Ms. Phipps, but we are still missing one trail connection to the Cooper Mountain Regional Park, and I know that Metro is the linchpin there, but I just want to bring it up again.
Yes.
And then last but not least, I want to mention, for the benefit of my colleagues, who I don't know if you've addressed this yet in the draft preferred approach documentation. But one thing you may want to share with the council at some point is where the school district boundary maps are, because the Hillsborough School District is responsible for some portion of this map we're looking at right now.
That's
correct. That doesn't make people nervous or bother them. It should, and it bothered us a lot about South Cooper Mountain, so we went to some very considerable lengths to try to fix that. I don't know if we would be successful doing it again, but it's right next door to one of Beaverton School District's high schools. So
is it not all Beaverton?
Nope, not all Beaverton School District.
So the school district boundary line is roughly halfway through the project area. So the western half is Hillsborough School District.
Yeah, so weird stuff happens in that universe. But that's all I wanted to bring attention to tonight. Any further comments for Ms. Phipps or questions? Great work so far. Thank you very much for coming and speaking with us again. It just keeps moving forward.
Thank you very much for your time. And for anyone listening or watching, I do want to just plug the project webpage where you can find all of the materials that were shared tonight. And you can also visit the webpage to sign up for project updates. So you'll find out about those upcoming meetings and surveys that we have going out. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. And with that, we move to our last public item of business, which is council new business. Does anyone care to bring up new topics this evening? And I'm not seeing any because we've been very efficient in taking care of all of our business tonight. So tonight we are going to move into an executive session. And let me ask Mr. City Attorney, do you anticipate that we will have any official business to do after that executive session?
No, there won't be any.
Okay, very good. In that case, the open public part of this council meeting is about to end because we are going to move into executive session in accordance with ORS 192.660 sub 2 sub H to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. And pursuant to ORS 192.660 sub 4, it is the City Council's requirement that the items discussed not be disclosed by media representatives or others. So to members of the public and those members of staff who are not part of this, thank you very much for your attendance, and we will see you at a future date. The rest of us, we go to the other link for the executive session, please.